speaker. He graduated from UNH in 1998, where he studied psychology and justice studies, but now works in the financial service industry. He's the proud father of 2 boys and husband to his wife, Gretchen. In October of 2009, his life changed in an instant when he was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré Syndrome. His recovery process was an emotional roller coaster, but through the incredible care he received and his own determination, he was able to make an almost full recovery. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Greg Tetreault.
Keynote's kind of a scary word, isn't it? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honor to be here with you all tonight. First off, I'd like to say thank you to Amanda Hakimi and Professor Beth Stewart for inviting me to join you. It's exciting for me to be up here for many reasons. For one, I spent 4 wonderful years here at this institution and have many great memories. For another, I'm standing up here talking to you. I'm living proof of the power of occupational therapy. It's miraculous that my body has come so far and recovered from my illness, and I owe a great deal of my recovery to occupational therapy. The background to my story is, in the fall of 2009, I woke up one morning and I had a 104-degree fever. My wife took one look at me and saw how much I was sweating and freezing at the same time and said, "You're going to the ER." And so I went to the ER that day, and I basically ended up with what was likely swine flu, which was the kind of craze at the time. So for the next 6 days, I had raging fevers, and I was on this regimen of alternating Tylenol and Advil just to manage my fevers, and I had fevers from 100 to 103 each day for 6 days. And then my fevers finally broke, and I felt better. You know, I went back to work. I worked for a full week, and then everything started to change. So kind of picture, if you will, on a Monday, you going through your normal routines. You know, you get up, you brush your teeth, you go have breakfast, you lift your hand to your mouth to drink your coffee. And now imagine each one of those days, all those little things becoming so much harder. So Monday I went to work and I got through the day, but my legs, just started to feel real heavy. And I just really feel like I was fat and out of shape and I needed to go work out. So I didn't really think all that much of it, and I went to bed, and then the next morning I realized I really had a big problem on my hands. Like Amanda said, I have 2 sons. I had one at the time, and he was 2 years old, and it's usually my job in the morning to make him breakfast, and as well as his lunch for school. So I got out the bread, and I got out the peanut butter and jelly, and I couldn't hold the knife and spread peanut butter at the same time. It was too hard. So I completely mangled this piece of bread. So that piece of bread was out. And I said, "Gretchen, you've got to make his peanut butter and jelly, because I can't. I need to eat some bananas. I'm low in potassium." So I knew in that moment that, my hands weren't right, my legs weren't right, I still felt heavy. She left and went to work and said, "You need to call a doctor when you get there." And unfortunately, she left for work, and I didn't realize how much strength I'd really lost in my arms. Because I drive a Honda Pilot, so it's not the easiest vehicle to get a kid in and out of. So I went down to pick him up, and I could barely lift him, and he was 25 pounds. So I kind of slung him into the car. And, I mean, he was fine, but it wasn't very graceful. And but I got him in there, and I got him to school. And so my normal routine is to crouch down at his level and give him a hug and a kiss before I leave. And I didn't really want to do that day, but 2-year-olds are a creature of habit, and he really wanted that. So I crouched down, and then I couldn't get up because I just didn't have the power in my legs to get myself back up. So I found a chair, pushed myself back up, and the teacher's looking at me like I'm completely crazy. So I went back to work, and I was walking in, and the receptionist took a look at me and said, "Did you hurt your back?" And I asked her why she said that. And she said, "You're hunched over, and you're walking funny, like you've hurt yourself." So I called the doctor's office, went back in, and since I just had the swine flu, they really wanted to check me for mono or pneumonia or something else that could cause this weakness. So they took chest x-rays and blood work and everything like that. And they sent me on my way, and they said they'd call me on Wednesday with the results. So Wednesday came around, and I begged my wife to go to work because I was really fine. You know, nothing was wrong. This was going to go away. And I realized very quickly, where my 10-second walk to the bathroom that took me 5 minutes, that I really wasn't fine, that something was seriously wrong. I had to get downstairs, and I had to go down on my butt to get downstairs because I didn't think my legs would hold me. I let the dog out, and I made the mistake of going out there with him, and I have one step to get into my house. And it's more of a little longer stride, and that stride was just long enough that I crumpled in a heap onto the floor and had to kind of crawl on my elbows to find a chair to pull myself back up. So I called the doctor's office just to ask, what's the results of my blood work? And he said that everything was normal, everything was inconclusive. I had elevated liver function, and that can be caused by a lot of things. But then I explained what was going on and how I was falling, and things were really progressing worse than he had thought. So he sent me to the ER. He had me sent to the ER. My father-in-law came over to take me to the ER, and Gretchen had told him that I was having trouble getting around, but he took one look at me and he couldn't believe it because I had my arm around him and he had to kind of carry me down the stairs and get me in the car, get me where I needed to go, and I refused to go into a wheelchair because, I wasn't really that sick. So I went into the ER. They ran a battery of tests on me, all the same tests they ran the day before, as well as a couple of others. And about 4 hours later, they came back with really great news. I have something called myositis, which is an elevation in your enzyme levels, which can cause your muscles to swell and therefore not work properly and can kind of hurt. I didn't have any pain, but I was psyched. This is great. He said you'll be fine in 5 or 6 days, and there's really no treatment for it. It just kind of goes away on its own. So I was like, oh, that's awesome, great. And then even in that short time that I was in the ER, I had spiraled even more downhill. That by the time I got home and my father-in-law left, I have 13 stairs to go up into my house, and I was terrified. That staircase looked impossible. And most of you can't see my wife, but she's really small, but she's freakishly strong. She somehow, I still don't really know how, she was able to pretty much support about 75% of my weight to get me up these 13 steps. And I've never been afraid of stairs in my life, but just looking at these stairs and knowing how weak my legs were, I thought this was just going to be impossible. And luckily, her sister was over too, and my wife's small and my sister-in-law's even smaller, and the two of them together carried me up to the 2nd floor to get me to bed. So the next day, I just so happened to have a follow-up with my primary doctor the next morning, and the way I presented to him, I finally had to admit that I needed a wheelchair to get around, and he kind of took one look at me, and he couldn't believe that I had been sent home. So he said, I'm really kind of embarrassed for medicine right now. I need to leave the room. Call the neurologist that I know, and I'll be back in 10 minutes because I really think you have transverse myelitis or you have Guillain-Barré Syndrome. I'll be right back. So, 10 minutes go by, and he, at this point, I'm kind of starting to freak out because, this is going downhill so fast. Monday I was at work. Thursday I can't do anything for myself. And, this was just nuts. So eventually I ended up going back to the ER for the 2nd time. They ran all those tests again, except this time I had nerve function tests, an MRI for probably about an hour. And if anybody's ever had an MRI for an hour, it's a pretty long time. And not a lot of fun either. And all those came back inconclusive, so the next step was a spinal tap, lumbar puncture. And it showed that I had elevated proteins in my cerebrospinal fluid,